Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it around me. I talk about tropical houseplants. So today I wanted to spotlight a really cool plant that some might consider a succulent. I'm not entirely sure where it would fall, but you'll see what I mean by this in a minute. So what I want to talk about today is the plant that you might be able to see peeking out right here. Today I want to talk about the plant that is commonly known as pregnant onion. And you can see quite how large it is, and you can also see quite how small the pot is in relation to the plant itself. Now, one of the reasons why it's called the pregnant onion is, I don't know if you can see all these little plantlets that are coming off the side of this plant. These are little baby bulbs that come up off the side of the actual plant itself, and I'm trying to find, you might be able to see possibly on the side here, if I move things out the way, can you see that there's a slight bump there on the actual plant itself? Let me see if I can move it so you can see a bit better. So right there, it's a bit of a bump, and essentially there's another bulb, and these bulbs grow off the side of the plant, and they create these little bumps, and there's these other little bulblets that would eventually become a plant like this. And you can already see this one bulblet is actually growing off the side there, and I can show you if I bring it in a bit closer. You can see that that is a different bulb plant that is coming from that little growth on the side. Now, if I bring it in a bit closer on this side, you might be able to see what the other small ones look like. And sorry, it's a bit chaotic, but you can see there, and you can see that they've all rooted in at the bottom. But this is a very, very cool plant. I've featured it once before on my channel. Let me just put it down because it is exceptionally heavy. It is definitely one of those plants that can retain a lot of water within its little bulblet. Let me just see if I can put it down without like sitting on its own leaves. So this plant is a plant that is very different. As you saw, it's called the pregnant onion, and it kind of does look a bit like a giant onion. And it can get even larger than this still. So essentially it adds layers to the outside, and it just keeps growing very much like an onion. And as I mentioned on the previous video, the reason why I got this plant originally is because I don't remember if it was online, if it was from a podcast, if it was maybe from a book somewhere. I saw that this plant, the leaves are quite succulent, almost as succulent as an aloe vera, but not quite as succulent, if that makes sense. But one thing that a lot of people do in some of the regions of the world is that they take the leaves from this plant, and there's a sap in it, and they put it onto skin if it's got broken skin, if it's skin that has got some form of an infection in it. And also I've seen that it can treat bites. So one of the main reasons why I bought this is because I wanted to try cutting it and putting it on in the summer for mosquito bites. And I can say, having tried that now, it does work to alleviate some of the itch and some of the inflammation. I don't know what the chemicals might be in the plant. There's no irritation at all, so it's very similar to the aloe vera, but it did work quite well. It doesn't work for a very long period of time. It's not, trust me, if it was one of those plants that you could just cut off a leaf, rub it up against your skin, and you never have to itch the mosquito bite again, there would be big companies making a lot of money from plants like this. It's not quite like that. It will take away some of that itch and some of that irritation for a bit, and then obviously it will come back. But it does actually work in that respect, and it is very, very cool in terms of the way that it grows. I don't think there's a lot of other plants. Obviously, you do get other plants that will pop out and create other little plantlets within the soil. I'm thinking of alocasia and colocasia here. That's quite common, that you'll get little bulblets growing out in the soil with the roots alongside the outside of the plant, and then you'll get pups essentially from those little bulblets. Another plant that will do that is things that are in the Tillandsia family. So air plants will do that they will kind of create an offshoot of the main plant. So the mother plant will create a little baby plant on the side. And essentially the moment that that baby plant is created, at least with Tillandsias, because if I'm not mistaken, they are monocarpic, and monocarpic plants means that it will bloom once, and essentially that bloom signals the death of that plant, because that bloom is then created in order for pollinators to pollinate across different plants, and then that way passing on the DNA, and then obviously they do pup as well. This is not a monocarpic bloomer, because essentially I've had this plant bloom several times now. I tend to cut it back. The bloom spike usually is quite large. There's loads of little white and green bell-shaped flowers that come off the top of that. It doesn't particularly smell. It doesn't really have a scent of any variety. The blooms are relatively insignificant, but it does take a lot of energy away from the plant. And this is generally the case with most plants when they are blooming. That bloom takes a lot of energy to create, and it takes away energy that would potentially be used for foliage. So what I would normally do is once a year, I'll let it bloom. If it tries to do it again, I will kind of head that bloom off quite quickly, so then it can release that energy back into the plant and create more foliage, because essentially with this plant, it is definitely all about the foliage. And this is a plant that I know is potentially a bit more popular and a bit more commonly found in the US. In the UK, I did struggle to find this plant specifically, and I think it was only one eBay seller, and I got a little baby bulblet like you saw the little babies around there, and I have grown it from that into this. Granted, that pot that it's in at the moment is very small, so I will need to repot it relatively soon. But in terms of care, if you're going to end up getting this plant, and I'll see if I can find the scientific name and I'll put it up here as well, but I know it by its common name, which is pregnant onion, is that it's very similar to a cactus or a succulent. So cactus or succulent soil mix, generally I will have it in terracotta because it helps wicks away some of that moisture. It is definitely a bit root bound, I think, for me at the moment, because normally I could go for a few days before I have to water it. At the moment, this is getting watered every 3 days, and it is bone dry within 3 days. But you can see, because of that, essentially that bulbous growth in the middle, it does store quite a bit of moisture in here. And that's also the reason why it's quite heavy, and I keep insisting on picking it up. But definitely a cool plant to start off with. Give it an awful lot of light, as much light as you can possibly give it. So direct sunlight would be perfect for this. And yeah, essentially grow it in a house. So I've usually grown this, ironically enough, this grows in my bedroom, of all things. But it gets a lot of bright light. It gets watered when the soil is entirely dry. And in terms of fertilizing, I've actually been fertilizing this quite regularly. That's probably why it's as large as it is, but I don't think this is a plant that necessarily needs a lot of fertilizer. So a very cool, easy, yet unusual plant. This might be a really interesting one. For instance, I know I've got it in my bedroom, but this might be an interesting one to have in a kitchen. And I'm sure that will start up a lot of conversations in your kitchen, because if your kitchen is anything like my kitchen, it doesn't matter what the rest of the house looks like. When everybody comes round to visit, everybody ends up congregating in the kitchen anyway. So this might be a nice little talking point, because people might just be sitting there going, why have you got a random onion growing in your kitchen window? And you can tell them that, look, it's not necessarily edible. As far as I'm aware, it's not edible. And it's not an onion, it is so-and-so, and you can tell them a bit more of the story. And hopefully if it starts getting little bublets on the side, you can show them that cute little quirk that this plant has. If I am not mistaken, the way that I discovered this plant, and I think I've just remembered now, might have been from one of my favorite podcasts. I might be wrong about this, but I think this was from Plant Daddy podcast, and I think they mentioned it first, and I was just like, ooh, what is this? I have never heard of it before. So Google found it, and I'm just like, ooh, need to get one of those. So I did, and I've never looked back. It's been great. Even through all the rare and unusual plants that I have, this is still one that people are still a bit like, what is that? What is that? why is there a random onion? So yeah, really cool plant. If you can get one of these, I think it's well worth it. And they do get quite large. And because of all the little baby bulblets, you can pot them up. They do take a while to root out and then start growing themselves. But then essentially you've got loads of these that you can give out to friends and family. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about this unusual plant. If you've got any questions and comments, as always, drop them down below. I'd love to have that conversation with you. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.